We're going to cover a lot of maintenance stuff today. I'm going to want some input. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in. After the talk, I'm going to ask if you have anything. Our third talk, 3 weeks from today, is going to be a people's choice. Okay, so it's going to be all topics that everybody suggests to me. And I've got a pad of paper up here, and you can also email me. So I'll have my email address up on the screen afterwards. Many of you already know how to get a hold of me as well. All right, so let's jump into it. I did get a question on a suggestion for an RV surge protector. What I call those is energy management systems. That's the more correct name for it. A surge is only one small aspect of what can damage your RV, so we call them an EMS. We're going to talk again a little bit about slide seal maintenance. I had another question about that. We're going to talk about how to work with your roof and slides to best protect your rig. We're going to talk about water heater descaling and water system sanitation. So these are pretty major topics, and one thing that I added at the end that isn't on the list here is storing your unit over the summer for you snowbirds, or if you're going to go away on a trip, okay? So, like last time, I'm going to be recommending or talking about several different products that I believe in. I receive no compensation from any of the products or vendors or manufacturers for any of these recommendations. Secondly, we may be talking about things that can be dangerous. Please do not attempt any activity on your RV that you are not fully confident in your ability to do so, okay? EMS systems. I showed this slide at the last talk, and there are a couple of products that I really like. The Power Watchdog on the left and in the middle. On the left is a plug-in device, and in the middle is a hardwired device. Down at the bottom is a very similar device from Progressive Industries. We're going to talk about some of the details. So those center ones are both hardwired, permanently mounted into your RV. And then the one on the right is similar to the one on the left. It is something you hang on the pole, and you can either put on the pole and plug your RV into it or eliminate from the system for whatever reason. So let's talk a little bit about why you have these. I know before we got here, just before we got here, there was some major power event and several people lost equipment on their RVs because of a very large event. As I hear, it was due to a nearby lightning strike, but I was not here. I don't know. Surge guard. I know somebody had a surge guard in their RV and had a nearby lightning strike in another location. The surge guard actually protected the RV against it. No manufacturer will guarantee your RV against a lightning strike. It's just simply too much power to protect. They were happy that it did so. They replaced the unit free of charge, but please don't expect that that much energy will be protected. It's simply beyond control. However, normal power grid fluctuations, loss in voltage, loss of frequency or variation in frequency, or a significant surge will be handled by these EMS systems. Now, to give you an idea, that bottom Progressive Industries unit, I used to have that in our rig, and this remote device allows you to watch the status of it, but you have to be in front of that little control device. The benefit to the top system or the ones on left and right is they are Bluetooth compatible. You can pull it up on your phone and see what your current voltage is on each leg of power, and you can see what the frequency is and how many amps you're currently using on each leg of your 50 amp service. Or if you have a 30 amp service, how much you're using on that 30 amp at any given time. The benefit to the Progressive Industries hardwired is it had a bypass switch. It's both a benefit and a liability. Your number one thing to do when you have poor incoming power and you're sick of your system shutting off and not providing power to your system, the number one thing you're going to want to do is bypass the system and continue to get power to your RV. That is exactly what you don't want to do, because the reality is it's protecting your RV from brownouts or bad frequency and so forth. As for which device I would recommend, they're all fairly equal. There are lesser systems made. There are systems that will not monitor frequency and just do a standard surge protection. These systems, these generally cost, I want to say right now in the order of $250 to $350, are the things that I would recommend for any situation. I have also changed my mind. I used to be a very big opponent of the hardwired systems. In fact, the system I have in my trailer right now is a hardwired system. I'm going to be putting in a very large Victron inverter system, which does most of these functions, but not all of them. When I do that, I will be using an external device because there are going to be times when I may hook up a generator to the RV. The generator does not have a proper ground. It's okay, everything's safe, but the power watchdog on the left that I want to use will shut off power to the system because of that unusual ground situation. Victron, or actually Hughes Autoformer Company, is currently working on a workaround for that mistake of a system. But anyway, it would allow me to take that off, plug the generator straight in, and run that way. If you have an internal generator, this is no problem. Any questions on EMS systems? Yes?
What's the life expectancy of those?
Life expectancy, I would not be surprised to get 5 good years out of them. Beyond that, you're starting to play with it. At 10 years, I would replace it. So I've seen them show faults at 8 years, and I wouldn't call that a failure of the system. I would just call that age. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any others? Okay, I'm going to have you repeat that.
Can you repeat that?
So are these surge or EMS protectors single use once the surge is passed through them?
Yes, they're single use. The caveat to that is most systems are protected. For example, I know, because I've had the device, I know Progressive Industries, if you have an event that causes a system to fail, they will guarantee the device inside so you can swap it out. And these are easy to open the cover, swap it out, and replace. Most devices are guaranteed against an event, but it is a one-time, one-shot event. So the benefit to having, again, the benefit to having the external device is, let's say that we get a massive power surge and the device is faulted. With a hardwired system, for example, the Power Watchdog, with a hardwired system, your RV is not going to run again until you take that out of the circuit or replace it. With an external system, you can go ahead and take it off your RV, plug in your RV, and the next day drive out to St. Augustine or Gainesville and get a replacement unit. Or if somebody's got one close by, I'm not even sure if Ace has them or not. Ace may have a basic version, but I wouldn't trust a basic version. You'll see them on Amazon for $50 to $75, $85. I would not trust those for full-time RV, just because there's a reason that they're 50 or 75 compared to 250. Yes?
For my grandparents, we actually purchased the one from the line.
Yeah.
The internal, and it's done great.
Yeah.
It's not just the surge protection, it's the additional EMS, which I researched is what you want for long term.
Exactly. Exactly. And those are great. Thanks for the comment. Anything else on EMS? Yes.
For the watchdog on the left, I had a short at the female end that got fried. They replaced the unit under warranty.
Yeah, it's a great company. They are a really good company. You want to talk about a myth? The company that makes that is called Hughes Autoformers. Now, I want to be very careful about the use of terms here. I tend to be somebody that's precise in my language. The company is called Hughes Autoformers. There's a device called an auto transformer. You will hear people say that the Hughes Autoformer component is forbidden for the National Electric Code. My belief is that's not true. The National Electric Code does forbid an auto transformer. An auto transformer automatically changes what it's transforming to power down to 120 volts. A Hughes autoformer is a unfortunately named device that does not automatically change its transformation. By definition, for what the NEC doesn't like, the Hughes autoformer does not fit that definition. There's a lot of controversy in the RV world about whether those devices are allowed or not. And I've been to campgrounds that will not. They say if you have a power boosting device like an autoformer, it is not allowed. Somehow they think you're getting more power out of the pole than the pole should provide. Physically, you can't do that. You get so many volts, so many amps. You can play with the volts and amps, but there's only so many watts coming out of that power pole. So that's my research on it, and that's just something to think about and go on from there. Any other questions? Okay. So slide seal maintenance, we talked about this again last time, right at the end of the last session. 3-in-1 RV rubber seal conditioner. This is what I use on our RV. I have been told that, I want to say it's Cedar Creek, says not to use any foreign substance on the seals. Leave them natural, just wash them. I just learned that 3 or 4 days ago. That is the only manufacturer and the only time I've ever heard anybody say not to use slide seal conditioner. So I suggest you might want to check with your RV manufacturer or on the forums online, but I've not seen any problem with this chemical. Again, I use it on mine. I wet a rag, and where the slide seal flap is, I do both the inside and the outside and make sure it's nice and covered, but not dripping wet. And that has done great for us. I do it about every 6 months. For those of you with slide toppers, this becomes an issue because you've got to get across your slide top and do that as well. You will lose capability of that flap over time. It really kind of depends on how much you use your slide, or if you're stationary all the time and the slide's always out. That's another thing. If you're traveling often, I would definitely, periodically, maybe once a year, remove that slide topper correctly, pull it back out of the way, condition, clean that slide seal on the top. I didn't get a picture of it. Anybody familiar with the sides of the slide, the little rubber strips on the side of the slide? Those are called slide flippers. And all they are is a piece of thin seal material that's stuck on the side. And its sole purpose in life is when your slide is moving out, it will grab your slide seal, flip it over the proper way so that your slide seal is facing out when your slide's out. As it comes in, if your slide hasn't already flipped, it hits your slide seal and it flips it inward as you're bringing in your slide. That's all those are for. And it's just making sure that your slide seal is facing out when it's out or in when it's in.
So the condition is for those rubber flaps?
I'm sorry?
The conditioner is for the rubber flaps?
Yes. And the only place I use that on my RV is for the slide seals. It could be used other places, but I tend to use other chemicals and stuff for different places.
What's the name of this conditioner?
That is 3-in-1 RV Care Rubber Seal Conditioner. Yes?
If you have a large slide, what's the weight capacity of the roof of the slide?
0, in my opinion.
So how do you get it up there?
Bring that in, condition the seal, be on a ladder on the outside of it or on the top of the roof if you can reach it. You'll often see me when I'm conditioning the top seals of a slide, I'll be laying on my belly on the top and doing that. But my personal opinion is, and what I've seen from other technicians, do not stand or walk on the top of a slide. You're talking about 2 inches at best versus your roof being 5 inches. And anybody that's walked on the roof at 5 inches and seen it's kind of flex, I would never want to walk on a 2-inch roof. They're not made to support weight. The other thing you might do when you're looking at your RV, when your slides are out, take a look across the top of the RV or the slide. Make sure that that slide seal is touching the slide all the way across. An older RV may have a little bit of a gap down there, and that slide seal may just barely be touching. You want to make sure that slide seal is up against and giving a little bit of force on the top of the slide to keep the water out. It doesn't take much, but it does have to be touching. I've seen a few RVs in the park where there's either just barely touching or a little bit of a gap between the top of the slide and the slide seal. Okay, any other questions on slides and seals?
Not a question.
Okay.
Oh, yes, it is. On the slides, now we're permanent. We've been here over 2 years. How often would you recommend putting the slide in and out again?
Generally the same as conditioning, about every 6 months, just to work it. I was recently working with a rig that hadn't been moved in 2 to 3 years. The slide came in and got stuck. And so you may have to do a little bit of a manual override to get it moving to go out again. So one thing that I am going to be doing on another RV here in the next couple of days is removing the gear pack off the bottom. So I'm talking about the slides with the bars below it and have the gear teeth on the bottom. There is a gear pack there that you're supposed to lubricate, basically the bearings in the gear pack. You don't want to lubricate the bar, you don't want to lubricate the gear rack, you want to lubricate the bearings on that. Same with the Schwintek. There are things to lubricate, but generally that Schwintek slide mechanism you see on the side, that generally does not need lubrication. And by putting material on there, all you're doing is picking up dust. Because all that's doing is, as a gear, is it's pushing and pulling on the gear rack, where it's the rotating mechanism that needs a lubrication. Any other questions on that? Yeah. The fixed posts, never use them. The problem is if you have any drifting of your landing gear or your stabilizers, if you have any loss of tire pressure, you're now physically supporting the slide separately than the body of the trailer. The trailer and the slide mechanism and the surround is intended to support the slide. And so the slide supports, they're a great idea in theory, but as soon as your trailer moves any level, you're now offsetting that balance. So, good question. Okay, any others on this? All right. So, roof and sidewalls. I get asked a lot when I'm doing AC cleaning or if I'm otherwise on the roof to just give a check over the seals on the roof and the condition of the Dicor. When I mention Dicor in this case, Dicor actually makes several different products, but the number one product you're thinking of is that caulking sealant that runs along anywhere where you have a vent attached to the roof or along the front or back cap or around the skylight and so forth. You need to inspect that after a period of time, make sure it hasn't pulled up or cracked or exposed any feature on the roof. If you get damage in that Dicor, there's a lot of people that will simply take another tube of Dicor, squirt a bunch over it, and walk away. Works relatively well, but it's kind of like the foundation for a house. If I've got two different devices coming together on the roof and I've got a seal there and it's starting to crack and pull away, if I cover it with new material, it's still cracked and pulled away under there. So I'm going to clean it off and clean the surface as best I can and put new material down. It can be a lengthy process to do a significant section of the roof. Eternabond tape is also an excellent thing, but it's not a replacement for Dicor seal. Eternabond tape has that gray butyl sticky substance on it with the thick vinyl backing on the back. It is actually commonly used on the outside of your slides, up against the outer flange and the slide top surface. You'll see a strip of white or black tape along that side. That's Eternabond tape. Great stuff. So you'll want to also check your roof membrane. There are generally three membranes, but I'll speak mainly about the number one, EPDM. something called TPO, it's an older membrane, then EPDM, and then PVC. For those of you with newer rigs, I'm not sure, maybe a Grand Design owner can correct me. I think the newer Grand Designs are all using PVC. Alliance uses 100% PVC. Why I mention that is the PVC is a little bit thinner than the EPDM. It has a 20-year lifespan, treated well, and it will cause bubbles and waves in the top. And there's a lot of owners who get very concerned that those bubbles and waves and unevenness are failures of the roof, but they're not. They're actually just shifting of the PVC. And as long as the roof membrane itself is intact, you're okay. In looking at that membrane, you'll notice over time, if you get up on the roof and you touch it, it'll feel chalky. That's a sign that it hasn't been protected. It's wearing just like the metal on a car from the 80s or 90s. It wasn't waxed often. Same process, UV breakdown, it's eating up that surface. And then we talked about inspecting the lap seals with pulling away or cracking. So the number one thing you want to do with your roof membrane is cleaning it and protecting it. Many different materials that can be used on these roofs for both cleaning and protecting. These are my two favorite. Why? Because one time when I used them, I think our rig was about a year old, I saw a definite difference in its ability to clean, and I saw a difference in its ability to protect after cleaning. So it took me a couple of hours to wash the roof. I did it with a brush, on my hands and knees, and standing in portions, was able to clean off the roof really well. The next day I went back and I applied the Roof Guard UV protectant. And as I apply that, you put it on, spray it on, you wipe it on, just kind of like a wax, except it's just watery chemical. And then after I sprayed that off, it was almost like rain dance was on my roof. And it has done really well. It is recommended for TPO, EPDM, and PVC roofs. Works just fine, and it protects really well. Yes?
What's the name of the cleaning and protection product?
So these are both Dicor products, and the one on the left is Rubber Roof Cleaner, and the one on the right is Roof Guard UV Protection. These are refill bottles. They come in little spray bottles, so I've got the spray bottle and I've got the refill bottle. And I try to do it once every 6 months. I'm a little late on doing it right now, even though in September I washed the roof, but I didn't end up protecting it yet.
Thank you.
Okay, so the sides, very similar to the roof, except there's more points to protect. You need to look where the windows join, where you have any what I call violation of the sidewall. You've got your fiberglass sidewall or your laminated sidewall. You'll have windows in there, you have your door edge, you've got compartment storage doors with the metal flanges that are set in there. All of those points where water could get in. When it was built, assuming it was built properly, got to add that term, you will have a foam seal behind that flange and then a bit of caulking around the whole thing. That caulking, up until recently, most manufacturers were using 100% silicon. Most of you know that the 100% silicon will not stick to anything. It actually looks really good, it's rubbery, it's flexible, but it actually doesn't adhere to the surface. And that's a major problem, and that's why for years RV manufacturers have said you've got to look at this and reapply it all the time because it wasn't sticking to the material. I use the GeoCell ProFlex on top. GeoCell ProFlex RV, that's exclusively what I use. Lexel is another one. You'll notice Lexel says sticks to almost anything, and it says sticks to wet surface. Same thing with GeoCell. You can apply GeoCell in a drizzle, you just can't apply it in a steady rain. Within an hour of applying it, it will be cured enough to protect against water intrusion. So what you want to do is you want to go through and Look at all those edges. If you have a little bit pulled away or it's not looking good, just take a plastic scraping tool, clean it off, use some isopropyl alcohol, clean the surface, and then go through and apply the geocell. The geocell, for example, and I'm speaking about this because this is what I use both at work and on my own rig, don't apply too much geocell before you go back and wipe it down. It actually skins up pretty quickly. And expect that your hands are going to get messy. It's a little bit like playing with that old rubber cement, except 10 times worse to clean off. I try to remember to put gloves on when I'm using it. Don't always remember that. But the geocell is excellent stuff. And it is what, for example, Alliance is using it now. I think that Heartland is using it and Grand Design is using it. Okay. Any questions on those?
We talked about here. One, when they clean them, a lot of pressure where clean the campers. What's your recommendation on that?
Don't get too close to it. It'll cut right through it. I don't have a lot of experience using a pressure washer on a roof. I never have. I know that people do, and I don't want to say that they're doing anything wrong because I don't know that. In fact, if you're going to get your roof coated with any type of coating, they will pressure wash. They will be taking off a significant portion of the membrane. And that's intentional for that roof coating to get, basically like I was talking about with taking off the Dicor, get off all the old junk that isn't highly adhered and then apply the sealant.
You recommend sealant after they pressure spray? You recommend putting more sealant on it? Or?
I don't like the sealant. That's a personal opinion. I don't think the sealant's been out long enough for me to trust my six-figure rig to it. I would go with a membrane replacement, but that's my personal opinion. I have talked to some technicians who have seen the spray-on sealant and the roll-on sealant. Their opinion was don't get the spray-on. But their opinion was also the jury's still out on the roll-on. And they don't see any problem with it, but it's one of those things where you want to see that for 5 or 10 years before you do something like that. So would I caution somebody against getting the roll-on sealant? No. But it's something, due diligence, see who's doing it, make sure it's done right. I was looking at pictures in preparation for this, and I almost included a picture. Somebody had pressure washed her roof, and it was almost all black. That membrane was almost all completely gone. They had solar panels on top with wires down the roof. They rolled right over the top of the whole thing. And so, in my opinion, that was a misapplication of the sealant because now they had wires that were half exposed and half buried. And so you had violation points in the sealant. So it's very process. You'll meet people who do the job right, who do the job not so right. And just be careful how it gets done.
Thank you.
Other questions on roofs or sides, ceiling? Okay. Water systems. First, we're going to talk about water heaters descale. Has anybody gotten one of those little wands, Camco wands, it's a little rod, and it's got a little curved tip, wash out your water heater? Okay, that's great. But if you're dealing with hard water issues, think about faucets in a home or shower glass. That water scale doesn't wash off. The water scale stays. So once you get hard water scale in your rig, in your fixtures, in your water heater, when it's heated up and it's sitting for a long time, you're going to have to do something different than spray it to get it all out of there. Okay? That's what this process is for. This process is a little bit more, I won't say advanced, but it's a little bit more meticulous, but it will clean out your water heater. First, you're going to have to get a way to get distilled vinegar into your water heater. Best way to do that is to make a device that has a screw on end that matches your drain plug or your anode rod. It's got a barb on it. Take a short section of hose with a valve and then connect a funnel on the top of the valve. We'll talk about this in a little bit. You're going to need your socket to remove the drain plug or the anode rod, and you're going to need 6 to 10 gallons of distilled white vinegar. Now you can go to a restaurant supply store, buy very concentrated vinegar and mix it down yourself, be very careful with that because the stuff sold in those stores is around 30%, 20 to 30% vinegar. You want to use 5%. Anything more than that is pretty caustic. So I just buy a bunch of white vinegar, okay? This is kind of what it looks like. I'll show you another picture here, but you've got your pressure and temperature valve up at the top of your water heater. You're going to connect this custom tool to the bottom. You can see the X at near the funnel. That's to shut it off after you've started working on it. So what you're going to end up doing with this is you're going to turn off the water heater. After you turn off the water heater, you want to run the hot water inside of your rig or at your external spray port. Get all the hot water out of there before you do anything further. Once you run the hot water out, you want to bypass your water heater so that no water can come into it or out of it from the back. Okay, now you've isolated the water heater from your water system. There's many travel trailers where those are manual valves at the back of the heater, or many of you now have the Nautilus panels that have different valve settings on bypassing water heaters, winterizing, running your water pump. There's different methods to do this. Once you've got your water heater isolated, you open your pressure and temperature valve, which is at the top. It's got that little flip. You open that up to let air in, and then you take out your anode rod or your drain plug, drain the water heater. Okay? Now we've got the water heater empty. We're ready to descale it. You're going to connect the device down at the bottom. You're going to leave the valve at the top open, and you're going to pour in your 6 to 10 gallons of distilled white vinegar. And I keep saying 6 to 10 because it depends on the size of the water heater you have. So you're going to fill your water heater until you've got vinegar coming out of the top. Then you close the valve on the hose and you walk away. Come back the next day. Okay? So you full-timers, this means no hot water for 24 hours. Or, like we'll do in a couple days or in a couple weeks, we'll go on a trip somewhere for a day or two. I'll do this before we leave, clean up the water heater when we get back. After you've let this sit, you're going to wait 24 hours. After you let it sit, you're going to take that hose, drain it into a bucket. It's going to be milky white. It's going to have all the calcification, all the junk in it. Detach the hose, use your wand, and rinse out the water heater then. That's going to be cleaned off, descaled, and set up nice. After you've rinsed it really well, you'll go ahead and close up your drain valve, close your TMP valve, turn off your bypass, let it start filling. Open your valve when you're filling. Get that air out of there, fill it all up, and then return your water heater's service. Questions on this?
Does this apply to a tankless water heater as well?
There is a tankless water heater process. It is different than this because a tankless water heater really doesn't have much storage. But there is a process for tankless water heaters, and it's something you should do after a year and a half. So I'm going to do it to mine as a secondary step. So my trailer is 3 years old. And with the system I've got, I would not do this every year. I wouldn't expect to do it. In my system, water goes from the spigot to a water filter. Goes through a 2-stage water filter down to 0.5 microns, which is the same filtration level as a Brita that you buy for your refrigerator. Once it goes through the filter, it goes into a water softener. When it leaves a water softener, it goes to a pressure regulator and then into the coach. Not a drop of water goes into my coach that hasn't been through the filter and water softener. So I don't expect to have many problems, and I haven't seen problems on my fixtures. I haven't had excessive drips, but that alleviates the need to do this. And the water softeners, there's a system called on-the-go water softener, and there's a few others. But an on-the-go water softener is just a small little bottle. Many trailers and RVs in the park have them, both external and internal. And they're simple to use. You can check your water hardness, and as your water hardness starts to raise, you just go through a backwash principle, a charging process, put it back in service. About a 15, 20-minute process. Atwood furnace or an Atwood water heater does not have a anode rod. That's because the furnace itself is aluminum, or the water heater itself is aluminum. It has a plastic drain plug. That plastic drain plug, I would highly recommend always use an Atwood drain plug for the Atwood water heater. Camco will sell you metal, either brass or steel valves as a drain. That metal device on your tank will create bimetallic corrosion. You will never get it off. You will also be defeating a safety setup in your water heater. The water heater has 3 safety systems for an Atwood. Number 1 is your emergency temperature cutoff. That is your main line of defense. If your water heater turns on and doesn't automatically turn off through the normal thermostat, your emergency cutoff will shut it off. If that fails, your pressure temperature valve, just like on a residential home, that will open up due to excessive pressure, excessive temperature, or both. If for whatever reason that valve fails, on an Atwood furnace, the plastic drain plug will go shooting out of there. If you replace that plastic drain plug with a metal valve, you have now created a pressure cooker that will fail if the other devices fail, to catastrophic result. So I will not work on a trailer that has got this. If there's a water heater problem and I walk up and somebody has modified the drain plug system on an Atwood, I will not work on it unless I get in writing that we're going to return that to factory condition. So, but yes, you may have a water heater that doesn't have an anode rod. If that's the case, you don't need one because it's not creating a system where it needs that sacrificial anode. Another question that people get is, do I use a magnesium rod or do I use an aluminum rod? The answer is use magnesium unless your hot water smells like rotten eggs. If your hot water smells like rotten eggs, switch to an aluminum rod. There are places that have too much minerals in the water and you end up getting that foul odor. You switch to an aluminum while you're at that location. When you go somewhere else, go back to a magnesium. Magnesium, if you ask for an anode rod, you walk into a store, I need an anode rod for my water heater. They're going to give you a magnesium one. That's the default. Any other questions on that? Okay, let's talk about water system sanitization overall. How many people here use their water pump once every 6 months? Good, good. Okay, just like slides I was talking about, and I thought about this, airplanes want to live in the sky. They actually degrade big time sitting on the ground. And they need to be where they're made to be. A water pump is much the same way. A water pump will degrade if it's not doing its job. How fast, how quickly, kind of depends on what was run through it and what conditions it's in. I would recommend using a water tank and water pump every once in a while just to keep it cycling. I try to do it once a quarter or once every 6 months. At least fill the tank and use it for a day. Okay? So to do that, part of that is making sure that the tank hasn't gotten stale or developed any problems with it. So here, the general process is you're going to isolate your system. In this case, you're going to take your water heater out of play. That runs through all the time. That gets a lot of use. It heats up. Assuming that you don't have any scale in it or whatnot, it's doing great. This will not address scaling in your water heater and the need to clean that out. You're going to fill your tank, your fresh water tank. You're going to run sanitizer through the entire system. You're going to put sanitizer into the tank. You're going to use your water pump to pump water into every faucet and every spigot, everything you've got. And then you're going to let it sit for a little while. You're going to drain the water tank. And then for 3 times, you're going to fill the water tank, run clean water through the pipes. That's the general process. I've used the Spring Fresh system and I've used bleach. Both work equally as well. This Spring Fresh fluid doesn't quite smell like bleach, but it has a sanitizing effect. And it seems to clean up a little bit easier than bleach. It doesn't have as much leftover smell as the bleach. So if you're using bleach, they recommend 1/4 cup to every 15 gallons of your water tank. Yes?
How do you put that into your system?
That, we're going to talk about that on the next slide, but generally, for those of you that have a water panel with multiple valves, now this label is off of a system with 5 valves. There are systems with as little as 2. There's different systems out there, but one of the features is siphon from fixtures using a pump, or siphon to the tank from pump. What you do is you take a short section of garden hose that would hook to your panel, put it into a bottle of that. So that 1 gallon of Spring Fresh, I need half a gallon for my system. So what I would do is I would set this inside my pass-through, and you would on your trailer as well. Connect the hose to your city water inlet, put the end of the hose into the container, turn on your water pump with it set to the sanitizing or the winterizing setting. It'll pull through that hose into the tank. And what I would do is if I was using bleach, and let's say I had to use a half a cup for my system, I would put a half a cup into a bucket, fill the bucket with water, and then pump through the full bucket into the tank. Then I would take that off and I would connect the city water, use the city water to fill into the tank. And once your tank is full, you want to use your water pump to pump to every one of your fixtures. You're going to turn on the water pump, go into your kitchen, run the cold water, and run the hot water. Remember, your hot water is bypassed, so it still has a flow that doesn't go through the water heater. Run it until you smell the bleach or you smell the cleaning solution at the sink. Do the same thing for your bathroom or bathrooms. Do the same thing for your shower. Do the same thing for your toilets. Okay? Run clean through all of it. Go outside to your outside sprayer, run fluid through that. Get it all out of there. Now let it sit for 15 minutes. Now dump your water tank. I've got a 100-gallon water tank. I'm going to dump 100 gallons out. Okay? Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the water tank, another 100 gallons in. I'm going to run all faucets for 3 to 5 minutes using that first fresh water tank. And then I'm going to repeat that process 2 more times. Dump the 100 gallons, run clear water through these 3 to 5 minutes each time. By the time you do this a 3rd time, you will not be smelling anything coming out of your faucets. Your system's sanitized, it's ready to go for another 6 months to a year, depending on where you go. So, for example, if you're always here and you're using your water system every 3 months, you probably could only do this once a year and be just fine. If you're traveling multiple places, you go into some questionable places, even with the filter, even with the water softener, I like to sanitize our system at least once a year, just to know that it's clean in there. Any questions on this? Yeah.
I've sanitized ours 2 or 3 different times, and I've never bypassed the water heater. Is that going to be a problem?
No. It's not a problem. It's just an extra 6 to 10 gallons going through there, depending on what you have. But bypassing the water heater, my general opinion is you've got water in there that's so hot and it's flowing all the time that you're not going to have a problem. Now, if you've stored your rig for a while and it might have been slightly wet, you may want to run through there just to help doing that. But no, it's not going to cause a problem. Any other questions? Okay. So, last question I got a question about storing in the summer. Many of you are going to be more well-versed in this than I am, but I did some research on this, and there's 2 general thought processes. 1, turn everything off, open up a couple of vents, and let the system sit. Number 2, turn on your air conditioner, let it sit for 80 to 85 if you have power. Let the system keep the rig at that low humidity by running the air conditioner all year. Do I have a preference for one or the other? I would probably be the one to store it simply with the vents open. Of course, I picture the Max Air vent cover because you certainly wouldn't want to leave your vents open with without those. But I would otherwise leave the vents open, make sure some fresh air gets through there over time. Again, you can run your AC 80, 85 degrees. Some people buy dehumidifiers with an automatic pump into the sink, and they'll let that run. The problem with that is those shut down at 90 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, so you've got to run your air conditioner. When you're running your air conditioner, you're kind of drying out the air anyway. So it's kind of 6 one way, half dozen the other about what you're going to do with that. And then if you have the self-drain, the other problem is how much water are you going to get in there and how long are you gone? And how much do you want to risk your gray tank filling up? So then you would leave your gray tank open. And there's a lot of people who talk about don't leave your gray tank open for too long. And this is in the tank cleaning business. There can be a lot of nasties that come up from the sewer over time, especially on a system that's not used often. So that's something to think about. Okay, so those are some hints on dealing with long-term summer storage. Anybody have any comments or experience that they have you could share?
I have a question. So you talk about not leaving the gray tank open because of odor and things like that. So it's best if you're not flushing weekly to keep them closed.
Yes, and in fact, we have a washer and dryer in our trailer. We have gone to keeping the gray tank closed. There's another reason for that. Think of your kitchen. So many larger trailers now have 2 gray tanks. And even if you don't have 2 gray tanks on a single gray tank, if you leave it open, think about what you really put down your kitchen sink. Cooking grease, food scraps, and those things. When that hits that tank, let's say your tank's open, it's going to kind of flow, and any grease that gets cold, any food particles are going to sit there, and they're going to build up. And just like the dreaded poop pyramid, you're going to be building up stuff in your tank, and that's not going to get a chance to flush out. So it's really best to keep your gray tank closed. When you're doing laundry, be careful. Some washing machines can use a bucket load of water. And so when you're running laundry, you open them up, run that laundry, then close them.
Same thing for the black. You always want to keep that closed.
Black, always closed. Yeah. Black needs to be closed. Yep. We have our gray tank closed all the time except when we're doing laundry. Yeah. And there are people that say, well, I'm going to use a P-trap method in my drain line. That's only so effective. And so the recommendation from tank cleaning industry these days, the guys that are running around cleaning all the tanks, keep the tanks closed, gray and black. So that allows the system to fill up and allows you to get that flush. Yeah, it's new learning now. But what that does, that allows it to flush. Yes? Cleaning sensors? There's really not much of a way to do it except for getting liquid in and having it drain, or using a jetter, somebody with the pump to get in there and clean it out. There is supposed to be a product out there that you mount on the outside of your tank that is an ultrasonic sensor called a Sea Level 2, SEELEVAL, Sea Level 2 system. You paste those to the outside of the tank. And so that's non-mechanical. They're supposed to be much more accurate, and they connect to your phone. That's one of my down the road upgrades. In front first. Oh yeah.
They have a liquid conditioner for that. Is that effective in the way they recommend?
I haven't heard of it causing a problem. And I don't know much experience with that product. I would use it. We have used Calgon and Pine Sol for that specific reason, to keep those things lubricated. And I've run into a lot of people that use it, and nobody's complained of a split or a problem sealing the tank or anything. So I would say it's better to use it than not. I will give a caution. I just spoke with a tank cleaner buddy of mine 2 nights ago, and we were talking about chemicals to use in tanks. We've heard some scuttlebutt that this works, or this shouldn't be used, or that shouldn't be used. He said that he has seen a lot of reports of a product called Unique dissolving tanks, literally eating away tanks. But there's only one time that happens. Unique, as a product, it is a product name. It tells you to dump the tanks within 24 hours of putting it in, and I imagine the Commando's the same way. You dump the tanks after a specific period of time. That's so that it doesn't eat your tanks. Follow the directions on the label and you'll be protected. Questions? That's the material that I had for today. I want to thank you for coming and field any general questions.
What's the requirement for general maintenance on your AC units?
Oh, yes. I would recommend an annual cleaning where you take off the cover of the AC, you take off the inner plenum cover that separates the inside from the outside. You use, if you have available, you use a special brush to brush the coils, the cleaning fins that are used, and you brush the dust off of the coils. Then you use a no-rinse coil cleaner, spray that down, it foams up, drains off the coils, drains off the rig on the outside. You do this for both the inside evaporator coils and the external condenser coils, and that cleans up your fins. It allows air to move through better. When you run, if you're able to use that brush on the coils, then it works really well. The chemical, one of them that I used is called Frost King Coil Cleaner. It's a tall blue bottle. They sell it at Ace. Frost King. And it has a little brush on the top of it with soft, semi-soft bristles. You can gently put those against the coil and sweep up, and I consistently am able to unbend damaged coils. Damaged coils on an air conditioner cause more headache than you can imagine. I want to say it's 3/4 of an inch area, which is about the size of a $50, will cause a 1 to 2 degree drop in cooling capability. It's actually a very significant number for those coils to be damaged, and that's the evaporator coil inside. So when I do cleanings, I clean those as best I can. And I've run across a couple of air conditioners where I wish I had real coil brushes. They make brushes to hit different size coils and comb them out and straighten them out, but it does actually make a difference. But that's all that's needed, is spray those things out. Now the Frost King I use outside. On the inside, I use a chemical called New Calgon. NU-Calgon, C-A-L-G-O-N. It is a, New Calgon, no rinse evaporator cleaner.
What was the C-A?
C-A-L-G-O-N. That's the stuff I use inside because that's the air you're breathing all the time, and that's intended for inside evaporator coils. So I use 2 chemicals to clean each AC. So that's all it is. You take off the outer cover, take off the inner cover, sweep the coils, spray them down. That's a basic cleaning. And it should be done at least once a year. Anything else? Yes, sir. Ceramic is amazing. And ceramic, generally, you don't need to apply anything on top of that, but usually go with whoever's applying it. We have a UV coating that isn't ceramic. We still need to wax. But ceramic, I've seen it's amazing. It's worth the money. I love it, but I haven't put it on ours. Anything else? Okay, I want to invite you, my email address is up here. I have a pad of paper. I'll get to your question in just a moment. I have a pad of paper. Please, over the next 2 weeks, if you think of something you want to know about, email me, email Kim, let us know so that we can include it in our next seminar. Okay.
Sorry, tire maintenance.
Huh?
Anything required with tire maintenance?
Tire maintenance? Keep them pumped up and use any general tire dressing on them.
Okay, so if you're long-term, how often should you be checking that tire pressure?
I don't know, once every few months.
Where's the PSI located on the tire?
It'll be listed right on the tire for max PSI, depending on the weight of the axle, the weight that's being carried. Usually the tire will hold a lot more weight than the axle is actually carrying. So you have to think about that a little bit. There are a couple formulas that you can find online to regulate the tire pressure, or you can look on the manufacturer's website for pressure versus the amount of weight. But worst come to worst, especially if you're stationary, fill it to its maximum rating and you're fine.
Okay.
If you're going to move, that's going to be where you're really going to watch that pressure.
Okay.
It's and the RV sticker will have it too. But the RV sticker will usually list the max that the tire has.
Okay.
So, and I want to thank Thervkeys for taping these and providing them online. It's helped reach so many more people, so thank you.